Hello and happy Wednesday, ANN. Welcome to my first installation of Planet Talk. Today is March 17th, 2021. It is 12:15 p.m. here in Key West, Florida, where I am recording, and I am your Wednesday anchor, Chris McNulty. Full transparency, I'm still pretty new to this type of interaction, so I've attempted this recording multiple times in the past couple of hours, so I'm hoping that this is the one that sticks. Happy St. Patrick's Day to all of my fellow Irish folk out there. I hope that today is full of family and friends, celebration of your Irish heritage with integrity. And I hope that it's full of good food, good dancing, Dionysian revelry, and I hope everyone is safe out there. So a very happy St. Patrick's Day to you all. So we're going to take a look at some of the major planetary configurations that we are currently experiencing. And I want to highlight a couple stories in the news that struck me as being particularly interesting and relevant. So first and foremost, as many of you probably are aware, we are currently under Saturn-Uranus square. Saturn being in the sign of Aquarius, Uranus being in the sign of Taurus. And we will be under the auspices of this meeting of these two great archetypes, these planetary archetypes, until early 2023. And these will be coloring, flavoring our experiences from now until then. And this is a very unique meeting insofar as Saturn and Uranus represent pretty polar opposite archetypal personalities. Saturn represents constriction, the time-worn, that which can be maintained through time, the entrenched institutions of our lives. No, the word no, the stopping of things, the putting an end to things, maturity, wisdom that only comes with time and patience, authority figures, particularly older authority figures who we learn from in ways that kind of prevent us from our own youthful desires to just try things out. Like when you have a professor who's like, oh yeah, that's an interesting idea, but all of these people have already tried that, and you need to constrain your exuberance a little bit. Focus. That's very Saturnian. So we have Saturn in Aquarius in a square to Uranus in Taurus, and Uranus, the archetype of Uranus, has more to do with that youthful exuberance, to just try things out, to experiment. It has to do with liberation, freedom, enlightenment, flashes of insight. It has to do with the avant-garde, or the things that sort of make us kind of break out of our routines and our regular ways of doing things. Uranus has to do with artistic expression that kind of makes us go, what? It can be kind of a frictional relationship to our consciousness because it's not something that we're used to. It stretches us. Uranus has to do with fighting for freedom, quick quantum leaps from one way of doing things into another. It has to do with the rebel, the left of center. So we have this configuration for the next 2 years that we're going to be experiencing. And, there's going to be times when, we may see the more Uranian aspect of things coming through with major revolutions within our institutions. It makes me think of Biden's cabinet picks, something I'm going to be talking about in a little bit, particularly with Deb Haaland, who is confirmed as the Secretary of the Interior. Just sort of these radical shifts that take place within institutions that, with Saturn's influence can create long-lasting change. Or we may see, Saturn kind of taking over a little bit when there are uprisings or movements of the people that are stopped by our government or our institutions. So that square is really a container that we are in. Currently, at this time, within that container, we're experiencing a conjunction of Venus, Neptune, Chiron, and the Sun. The Sun-Venus-Neptune conjunction in Pisces is shedding a light on the healing nature of our relationships, the spiritual depth of our relationships, the way that we relate to the divine, to spirit itself, to the cosmic consciousness. It's kind of a wonderful time for St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day always happens when the sun is in Pisces, but with this Venus-Neptune conjunction, it's a perfect time to sort of meld into or find healing within community or friendship, just loving relationships. It's also a good time for some libations with friends, but keep it safe, right? So those are some of the planetary configurations that I'm particularly looking at. A couple of news stories that took my attention when I was preparing for this segment. Two of them in particular have to do with the Catholic Church. And this has, I find these to be very relevant, not only, personally, because I was raised Catholic. I went through Catholic schools. I have a lot of personal history with the Catholic Church. I'm no longer a part of the church, but a lot of my upbringing was colored by Catholicism. But also, Catholicism is a major world institution that has very major material effects on billions of people over the planet, whether you're Catholic or not. And two stories came out, one on Monday, one on Tuesday, that are sort of, that represent two different movements within the church. So the first story that I read in the Associated Press, this was posted on Monday, and I noticed I'm a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and I have a lot of friends on social media who are also in that community. And I noticed a lot of people talking about the church and gay marriage. And I, was like, what's going on? So I found this story in which the Vatican on Monday made an official declaration that the Catholic Church will not be blessing same-sex unions. And the statement that they made is that God does not and cannot bless sin. He blesses sinful man so that he may recognize that he is part of his plan of love and allows himself to be changed by him, it said. And this was somewhat of a startling revelation, I think, for a lot of folks within the LGBTQ plus community, because of statements made by Pope Francis within the past few years, where he's made statements saying that same-sex couples should be allowed to have civil unions. In 2013, he famously made the statement, "If a person is gay, who am I to judge?" So I know that there was a lot of hope that the church may be shifting a little bit in its stance towards the LGBTQ plus community, or folks who fall outside the heteronormative binary. So this story came out, and to me, this represents the the square, or is represent, or is infused with this relationship between Saturn and Uranus, um, and partly because there was a bit of an expectation or a hope that the church was going to be moving towards greater acceptance of all people, and this 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 document is a very assertive, solid, determined no. They've defined the fact that they will not be doing that. With the Sun conjunct Venus and Neptune, it is a time where relationships within spiritual community are highlighted, and this document has really, defined what relationship within the Catholic spiritual community is. The gray area, or the expectation or the desire for some change to happen has completely been stopped. That the desire for Uranian evolution, revolution, and it has been put to a close by Saturn's swift, quick, determined no. And I think that it was very difficult for people in the LGBTQ plus community here, particularly LGBTQ plus Catholics. And it also, shows that these entrenched institutions do not want to change. They do not want to move forward towards like multiculturalism or pluralism, no matter how much people may hope. That power is contained within maintenance for these institutions, very Saturnian. On the flip side, a story that was released yesterday, Jesuits in the United States have pledged $100 million for racial reconciliation. So the Jesuit order, which is an order of Catholic priests, famously associated with education, have started a foundation to raise money for racial reconciliation. This is Plans for Truth and Reconciliation Initiative. It is a foundation that is a partnership between the Jesuit order and descendants of slaves that were sold by the Jesuit owners of Georgetown University. The Jesuits have already placed $15 million in a trust. Their goal is to raise $100 million within 5 years, with a much broader goal of reaching $1 billion. This conversation around Georgetown University, which is a Jesuit university, and their selling of slaves to pay off debts that were incurred for property for the university has been going on for a while. And it was just announced yesterday that they are putting their money where their mouth is. The foundation is going to be run by one of the descendants of one of the slaves who were sold in 1838. And this is one of the largest commitments by a religious institution or any institution in the United States for reparations. So this is, this to me is instilled with the Uranian influence over Saturn. We have this major institution, at least a part of it, right? The Jesuits, who are moving forward, who are hopefully going to pull, the greater institution of the Catholic Church forward into acknowledging harm that had been done, to making very material Saturn, material commitments to righting what has been wronged. And I think that this is just emblematic of the Uranian influence of Saturn, whereas the document that defined the church's stance on gay marriage, to me, feels much more like the Saturnian influence on Uranus. The fact that this is the church, brings in that inflection of Sun, Venus, and Neptune, shedding light on relationships within spiritual community, shedding light on how spiritual community influences relationships, whether within or without that community. And it's almost like a simultaneous push and pull in two directions, which can be pretty emblematic of a square. A square between two planetary bodies can feel sort of like which way is this going to go? We're forced into this situation. What is the outcome going to be? It can be a little bit of a push and a pull in one direction or another. And these two stories coming out seemingly simultaneously, within one day of each other, can show a little bit of that conflict within one religious institution. I think that ultimately the challenge and the opportunity of this square between Saturn and Uranus is how can these seemingly opposing archetypal principles come together in an outcome that honors what both principles have to offer, right? How can we simultaneously move forward while honoring tradition? How can we be free while also acknowledging our restraints? How can we burst through boundaries that are in place while also acknowledging the importance of boundaries? I think that this is one iteration of this archetypal dynamic within one institution, one very influential institution, but the seemingly different messages coming from these two stories can show what happens with a square. There's a little bit of moving forward, there's a little bit of moving back, there's uncertainty, there's conflict, there's some tension. And I think that we can see how Uranus and Saturn work together. Moving forward, moving back, moving forward, moving back, moving forward, moving back. I think that the one other thing that I find within the comparing of these two stories is that they came out just when Mercury moved from Aquarius into Pisces, right? So Mercury was in Aquarius for an extended stay due to Mercury's retrograde motion within the sign of Aquarius. And when Mercury was in Aquarius, our minds, the way that we communicate, can be very analytical, objective, clear cut. We can see things a bit more from the outside. And then when Mercury moves into Pisces, the clarity of message can get a little bit muddled, right? We're moving more into the poetic realm of communication, the more symbolic realm of communication, a little bit more, just a little bit more confusing in our communication. So the fact that these two stories were released from different places within the church, one from the Vatican, one from the Jesuits, it's like, where is the clarity of message here? You're moving forward on racial reparations, but you're confirming a seemingly traditional yet regressive stance on gay relationships. So that's one take on the day's news. Story that I find it important to highlight during this segment is that this past Monday, Deb Haaland was confirmed as the Secretary of the Interior in Joe Biden's administration. She is the first Native American cabinet member in U.S. history. She is a member of the Laguna Pueblo tribe, and she will be overseeing the Interior Department, which is the executive branch's department that oversees the federal government's relationship to the Native American tribes here in the United States, as well as the federally managed land here in the United States. I find this to be very, telling or emblematic of the Uranus-Saturn square, insofar as it is a movement within the structure of the American government, Saturn, towards towards freedom, liberation, and a different way of operating between the United States government and the Native American peoples here. It's almost like coming full circle for the relationship, or at least a movement towards coming full circle towards the relationship with the American government and Native tribes that have experienced genocide, colonization over the course of this country's history, and the continued constrainment of Native tribes on smaller and smaller parcels of land. It's like a Uranian energetic push from within the United States government, from within the structures and the institution that manages this country, towards hopefully a more equitable way that these lands are managed, because they will be overseen by someone who is a member of those tribes, who has worked for those tribes and with Native American peoples. I think that it's one example of the way that this Saturn-Uranus square can show itself. Traditionally, Native American tribes have had to pressure the government from the outside by protesting, by lobbying, and now there is one of their own at one of the highest levels of government overseeing the part of the government that is responsible for the relationships with those tribes. So, we have the Saturn container and the Saturn inertia of the United States government. And we have this and she had a very quick trajectory in her political career, having, just with it, like towards the end of the 2010s, becoming a member of the House of Representatives, and then very quickly becoming a member of the executive cabinet. Quick rise, like a Uranian, skyrocket. And now she, represents that which is outside, which is a very kind of Uranus characteristic, being outside of the norm, coming inside the Saturnian boundaries, and being able to influence the way that that Saturnian structure works and has relationship. And I hope to see more of that. I hope that, within this planetary dynamic of Uranus and Saturn that we will be experiencing for the next 2 years, we'll get to see some more working of liberatory individuals within government structures. I'm working to transform those structures from inside, because I see that as being the best outcome when we work with these planetary energies to transform the world that we live in into a more equitable, just world. So I will end my segment there. I appreciate you all for being here with me. I appreciate you all being on this experimental journey for me. This is still a new medium that I operate in. So any feedback, comments, please share them. I hope to continue to better these segments as I go forward. And I hope you all have a beautiful Wednesday. May your fire burn strong and your words ring true. Also, if you're interested in getting in touch with me, you can find me on my website, www.hearthandheraldastrology.com. That is my personal practice, and I look forward to hearing from you. Take care.